Hey guys, Baldock Studios here, and we are going to talk about Unreal Engine 5 animation retargeting today, and hopefully give you a couple of little tips along the way. First things first, a really good tip, a really good understanding of class hierarchy and what's being utilized in like marketplace assets or like just any tool set that you load up into the engine for the first time and you're like, man, I got to start somewhere. I got to understand like what's driving this, how is this behaving, what does this tool do, etc. Right? You can always dive off into reading documentation and stuff, but there's a really quick way of understanding any like right out of the gate what makes a Unreal Engine project tick, and it's based around the game structure that's built into the engine. So if you load up any template that Unreal Engine provides, you'll notice that like when you hit play, it loads the character up, usually a default mannequin. And the reason for that is because on the back end, on the C++ parent like game structure side, it's using the world settings usually here, which is not overridden, so it's usually set to none. And what that really does mean is that it's pulling it from the project settings. This is just an override per map. And default game mode by default loads the Unreal Mannequin. That's just the way it works. So the default pawn class that gets loaded is Unreal Mannequin, and it uses logic on the back end to possess that mannequin. You can override this. Some people have become familiar with the workflow of going and grabbing a character, dragging it into the scene, and setting auto possess to 0. All that does is say, hey, there's already a character in the scene that I've found and I've looked for. I'm going to possess that character instead. That's it. That's all that really does. And then, the player start is behind the scenes. The game mode base goes, is there a player start? Because if there is, that's the location I want to spawn the character that is the default pawn class. So that's how all of this works. But the quickest way to go, okay, what is my pawn that's being utilized, is to just hit play. Regardless if you have to do something first, load this avatar, whatever, just hit play and see what loads up. And the easiest way to understand what loads up is the F8 key. So you get this nice little depossess kind of debug view where you can go and click on anything while editor is running, and you just click this character and you'll get a name here. But even better than that, you can right click and browse to asset, and it'll bring you right to the base character class that's being utilized for pretty much, that works across the board for anything. So quickest way to understand right out of the gate what's the class character I'm working with. So over here, going back to the game hierarchy, we can browse to this game mode, which you can see in the character based, the Ready Player Me tool that I provided. I'm really clean. So inside of this tool, there's blueprints. Inside of the blueprints, here's all the blueprints. And the game mode is essentially the only thing set here on the override. The default pawn class is nothing. And what that means is somewhere along the line, I've decided to give you more control than allowing the editor to pick a pawn class and spawn it for you. So I've allowed you to say, hey, either in the controller or in the game mode, I'm going to allow you to dictate spawning. That's basically what's going on here. So if we open this up, you'll see there's this event load avatar. It builds the avatar, and then it spawns the base. And again, you can hit the hourglass here and see. So this allows you within networked play or multiplayer or whatever to have just more control over what the engine is doing, and you're just not spawning this same class all of the time no matter what. So that's all that is. Now, on the subject of animations and character systems, a character is built out of components, and the Ready Player Me SDK has this Ready Player Me actor component. This is a confusing name. It's not an actor. It's a component. But what it is doing is on this actor component, it looks to a skeletal system. It already is saying, I need to know the target that I'm loading these meshes on top of. And this is important because vertex animation, like vertex data, mesh data that is attached to a rig, which most people call rigs, is a skeletal system. And that skeletal system tells the character and the animation blueprint what is, what am I compatible with? What mesh data am I loading on top of this character? So I'm essentially just swapping this mesh out like if I was doing it manually in the engine. Well, we know that this mesh is set up to run with this animation BP. So we can go look at that. This animation BP is then tied to a skeleton, and we can go look at that. So we can pretty much see that this skeleton setup is not Unreal Engine. And because the rig and the SDK from Ready Player Me is sending mesh data to this skeletal system, it would be extremely hard to basically do what's called re-rigging on the fly. That means it is more efficient for you to use their skeletal system and retarget Unreal Engine 4 and 5 animations from an Unreal Engine skeleton to their system than try to figure out a way to work backwards and utilize Unreal Engine's mannequin and basically re-rig on the fly, like actually weight and skin and all of that stuff on the fly. So that, I'll take you through the process of this. In Unreal Engine 4, there was this retargeting manager, and it was here there you had a tool list. There was a window, and instead of like retargeting sources view, there was a retargeting manager, and you had this humanoid and a view and view and modify pose, and you would right click the animation retarget, and it was that system's still here in a way, but it takes some getting used to. But the goal here is to retarget UE4 animations to the Ready Player Me skeleton and let the Ready Player Me SDK do its thing. So for the most part, this is already done in the tool set for you. I've already provided the base mannequin animations bound to that skeletal system, and I've also got an animation blueprint set up and ready to go. So you don't have to mess with anything in the character. It's already ready for you. And at this point, you're just deciding what additional animations do I want to use. So I've imported this Frank Platformer animation kit, and this can be any animation kit you pick, right? So you would go to, your assets. I shortened this list down to animations by just typing in anim, and then I was like, oh, okay, Frank Platformer looks good. We can showcase using that. So inside of this folder, I wanted to find an idle. So I, kept looking around, and I found this look around idle, right? So, you can click the skeleton here, and you can just kind of dive right into what you want to do. But what I like doing is once I find this animation that I really like, I say, okay, right click. I want to find the skeleton. I want to know where it is in this hierarchy. And you can see there's skeletal meshes here, and that's where it is. So from here, you would create a rig on this skeleton in the old retargeting system. But what you do now, which is, there's no right click context thing here, which makes this a little confusing, unless it's just hidden somewhere that I don't know about. But you would right click in blank space, you would go to animations, and you would create an IK rig. So it's just in the normal, in the workflow of this now, it's just kind of in the normal top level, right? Now, in this rig, you'll create these chains. And these chains are almost like the retargeting system's humanoid rig, where it would make you go and select every bone. Some people like the old method better than the new method. Some people like the new method. I like the new method. I just wish they could be saved. In the old system, once you set up a humanoid rig and a mapping to a skeleton, you could save them and export them and import them, and there was some extra stuff you could do. But anyway, you would add a new chain root and just hit add here, and you would give it a name, and you would start somewhere. So you would start at the base. So you always look at like what's on the lower section of the chain and what's on the highest set of the chain. So thigh to foot would be like the leg chain, and like spine 1 to spine 3 would be like the spine chain, right? So clavicle L to hand L would be the arm chain. So you would go through that process, and you would pay really close attention to the names, because on the thing you want to retarget to, these names have to match. The chain names have to match. But you can see here, I want neck to head, clavicle to hand, thigh to foot, and then spine to spine. We'll get rid of that chain. And then once you're done with that, you right click and you set the target root. A thing to note here is that you'll see that Unreal Engine root bones are very stable. Mixamo, on the other hand, is an older system. And Unreal Engine and Mixamo root setup is not always the best. They don't always translate the best. So same thing here. I wanted to go find, I already took you guys to where those animations were located earlier. So in the tool, under retargeted, here's your animation set, and these were the mannequins that were, mannequin animations that were retargeted, built for this Anim BP. Here's a idle to run blend space that's used. These are state machines, are set up in the animation blueprint for state machine. And same thing, create a rig here, and then set your chains up and make sure they match, and then set your retarget root up. And just pray that you don't end up having issues when you go to retarget. So once this has been done, let's browse back out to this. We'll find that idle animation again. I wonder, yeah, I should probably do this here. So we'll go ahead and set up an IK retargeter. And then at this point, it's going to be like, well, what rig do you want? Pick an IK rig to copy the animation from, right? So we know that we want to copy animations from Unreal Engine skeletons. So I'm going to pick the one I want to copy from. So we pick that. It's in here. I'm going to name it to match the SK Frank. So I'm just going to call this Frank underscore IK underscore. And I guess I should get in the habit of calling these IK, but I'm just going to Frank platformer rig. I'm going to call it a rig, retargeter. Because that's in my head, that's what it is. IK mean, I get it. It's a chain. It's an inverse kinematics chain. But anyway, so inside of the retargeting data asset that you're setting up, your source IK rig is saying, okay, here's my source skeleton. And what is your target? Where do you want to go? And we want to go to the Ready Player Me. And then at this point, your chain mappings are down here to show like what chains it's copying to what. And if this is done correctly, Now as you pick, not just the idle animation, but pretty much anything, you can see that it's going to try to translate that for you. And as you can tell, the root is not translating into the Ready Player Me character very well. And we can go fix that. And we will go fix that. So now that we know that this is not coming over well, that root data is not being copied well, what we might do is say ignore the root and make the retargeting root the hips, and then here retargeting root is the pelvis, and now we've translated that data a little bit more accurately. For whatever reason, something in the chain is not liking this idle animation. So let's go look back at the hands. Clavicle to hand, clavicle to hand. Maybe. It's because the poses are really far off. Yes. And that's not the right bone I would like to be modifying. Which... maybe it is, and it just looks a little strange because it's stretching that shirt. Maybe. Let's see. Yeah, that's better. Yeah, so you will have to make some like fine-tuned adjustments to get exactly what you want set up. But once you get there, it's pretty like it's pretty nice, right? So all of this looks good. Happy with this. So now you have your retargeter set up. So this is like affirmation that you've went through this process and you're ready to start retargeting animations. From here, you can do things like animation copying from the UE4 system and everything, but I'm still kind of old school in the sense that I like to go ahead and get the animations in a directory structure that I'm familiar with and into a workflow that I'm familiar with, so that I can just tie them into my animation BP and, or my blend spaces or whatever at this point. So we'll go to that retargeted folder again, and idealistically I'll say, okay, I need to get more animations in here that I know I'm using with my base. So back to the animation that I wanted to use, now that we have the retargeting system done. I think it was this one. It is this one. So we'll right click this and we'll go retarget animation asset, duplicate and retarget, right? And it's going to say, what retargeter do you want to use? Well, I want to use the Frank Rig retargeter that we had set up, which understands all of this information. So at this point, you're back in familiar territory. This is a place where you're like, oh, I'm back to what I understood about UE4. You can change your directory. At this point, I'm going to pick the retargeted location. I can't remember. Why is it not? Is it under? Yes. So demo retarget. I'm gonna pick that location. I'm gonna hit OK, and then I'm gonna hit retarget. So it's gonna go through here and gather some information, and then it's gonna be like, hey, here's a new idle animation for your Ready Player Me character. So we're good. All of this is cool. We have the new animation, and then from here, you're just going to go to the animation blueprint and say, how do I want to use this? So the easiest way for me to explain this or get here is, now that we have this retargeted animation, this is the default idle. We'll just drag it over into the blend space. I'm going to get rid of these and drag this over to, okay. So whenever he's just sitting around idle, he's going to be kind of like looking around, and then as you start walking, he'll transition into the walk. And then we can save this out, and that's just kind of the simplest way, right? So it is adjusting this blend space for the default idle run state machine. But this can be like, I want to put a dodge in, call an event for a roll. I want to change my character's jump loop. It can be pretty much anything. I want to add an attack animation, whatever. But once you change this Anim BP, and you'll see I hit play, doesn't matter which avatar I load into the base character, I've now updated that animation BP for the base character to utilize that new idle. So here he is. He's in the scene and he's looking around on the idle, and he successfully used a retargeted Unreal Engine 4 animation from an Unreal Engine 4 animation pack. And that IK retargeter is set up to go for pretty much anything that utilizes that skeletal mesh. So, you know, if I wanted to do a different run, we've already went through that process. That's not a bad run. So it's the same steps at this point. Nothing else has to be changed. So we have a different run we can utilize, and we go to the Anim BP, idle run, come here. You can preview by holding control, and we see this full open run from a walk. So we'll get rid of this and just bring the run over. And now they, you know, your Ready Player Me character will run like that. Um, and I figure I'll just kind of go through this whole thing this time, load up the avatar. All right, so we have this, custom made character, and he has the new run style. So the animations have been retargeted and they're playing out fine. After this video, what I may do is strip out the animation, platformer animations that I've done, and at least save out like a rig for the Ready Player Me character so that it's ready to go with setting up your UE4 rig as well, and then using the IK rig retargeter. But anyway, I hope that was helpful and ties into the way that the retargeting system is meant to work towards your skeletal base, and how you would bring animations from any other skeletal system into your skeletal base that's set up on any character that you're using. Until next time, guys, I want to say thank you to all the Patreons, everyone that's supporting Wild Ox Studios and what I'm doing here, and the tutorials and the tools and all of the content. You guys are amazing and greatly appreciated. Yeah, have a great one.